It's a medical mix-up with devastating consequences.
It was this horrifying split second where I realized that that baby's blood type was not my husband's blood type.
This couple is suing for $10 million after the woman was artificially inseminated with the wrong sperm.
From ABC News, with anchors Diane Sawyer in New York, Sam Donaldson in Washington, Chief Correspondent Chris Wallace, Judd Rose, Jay Shadler, and Karen Burns. This is Prime Time.
Every year, about 30,000 babies are born in this country thanks to artificial insemination. It's estimated there are about 85 or 90 sperm banks nationwide. But it's hard to come up with an exact number because there is so little regulation. But one thing is clear, mistakes are made. Mistakes that can take a heavy human toll. Karen Burns met one couple whose experience was so traumatic, they agreed to talk to us only if their faces and voices were disguised and their real names not used. This is the story of Jane and John Doe.
It really was a miracle. It really was a miracle. And we just couldn't believe how wonderful it all was.
After 5 years of struggling with a fertility problem, Jane and John Doe finally had a baby. They conceived their child through artificial insemination, using what they thought was sperm John had donated.
I had that feeling of connection that here was my child. You know, this is something that was mine and also my wife's. It was ours, and we had done it together.
But that sense of awe abruptly changed. 3 days after the baby was born, the doctor came to see Jane alone.
And when he told me what the baby's blood type was, it was this horrifying split second where I realized that that baby's blood type was not my husband's blood type. My first reaction was, well, if this is not my husband's child, then whose child is this?
Jane and John Doe are among almost 100,000 couples who undergo artificial insemination each year. They paid a lab located here known as CryoV and University Fertility Services $620 to store John's sperm for later insemination by their doctor. But his sperm was apparently either mislabeled or misplaced, something the Does might never have known had it not been for the doctor's words to Jane that night in the hospital.
What did you think about that night, Jane?
I thought, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I may have just given birth to somebody else's baby.
I mean, if a doctor makes a mistake on an operating table and the person dies, you don't say people make mistakes all the time. You're very angry. You know, you lost somebody you love. Well, in a sense, I lost somebody. I lost someone I never got to know. My own child, my own biological child.
Joining us now, the couple we are calling John and Jane Doe. Once again, they are in disguise. Also, Dr. Jerome Sherman, who discovered the method for freezing sperm for artificial insemination in 1951. Dr. Sherman joins us from the University of Arkansas School for Medical Sciences, where he is a professor. Dr. Sherman, do you believe that if we had strong national regulation, we could avoid the kind of mistakes that we've just seen?
I'm afraid not.
Why not?
Because the incident is a result of human error. We have excellent federal regulation of aircraft, and unfortunately we have human error and we have terrible accidents. We have federal regulation of banks, and unfortunately there are mistakes that are made and accounts are, errors are made in accounts. The regulation, unfortunately, will not stop this human error.
John and Jane Doe, let me ask you whether you, I know that you disagree with Dr. Sherman, but what's your point?
Well, is that an argument that aircraft should not, travel should not be regulated, or banks should not be regulated?
Oh, no, don't misunderstand me. The banks should be regulated, and I would say that the American Association of Tissue Banks has excellent standards, and these standards have been employed, and over 50,000, conservatively, over 50,000 children have been born. Less than 1% of these children have been abnormal, while in the normal population, over 6% of the children born are abnormal.
Yes, but of course, may I just say, Doctor, that in the case of the Does, they are part of that 1%, and I guess it's very little consolation to them.
Oh, my heart goes out to you folks, because
there are certain areas of human activity that just need regulation, whether it be the field of nuclear reactors or pharmaceutical companies, and whether it may have an adverse financial effect on these activities or not, you don't question it.
There's no question that there should be regulation.
Right,
I say the regulations should be regulations that should say every bank should observe the standards of the American Association of Tissue Banks. But in all fairness, if my bank, if other banks were inspected yesterday by the federal government and found that everything is in perfect condition, everything is followed just the way it should be followed, it is still possible to make mistakes. It is still possible for human error to occur. And when this does occur, tragedies do ensue.
All right, we have laid out the arguments here. We're not going to be able to settle it tonight, but I have a final question for John and Jane Doe. Are you going to tell your child the truth eventually about the parentage?
Yes, eventually, but not until that child has passed adolescence, which means we are going to be in disguise for 20 years or so. And at the time, if the child then decides that the child wishes to go public or even private, since nobody knows about this, then it will be up to the child. But, you know, going back for one moment, though, to this regulation thing, you know, this is not like you go to a restaurant, you sit down, you order a hamburger, and, you know, there are certain regulations. Now, if you're going to regulate money in a bank and food in a restaurant, I really think that they should pay particularly attention to human life. You're not only talking about our life, you're talking about the life of our child and something that will go into generations and generations.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, the Does and Dr. Sherman for joining us tonight to talk about these errors and perhaps what can and cannot be done about them.
This has been a presentation of ABC News, where more Americans get their news than from any other source.